Welcome back to Indy Ball Nation. I have got to stop saying publicly, like on Twitter or on a podcast, oh, I got a video coming out soon, today, tomorrow. It's going to be a surprise from now on, right? That's what we're doing. Because the moment I say it, the universe is like, something's coming up, my guy. This topic for this video was requested through the Q&A on Indy Ball Report. Check that out every weekend. Comes out on all podcast platforms, major ones, I'd say. All, pretty much, whatever, semantics. And said, would you ever do a deep dive into park factors? And immediately Nick was like, that's kind of a Ryan thing. He's more of a that boy nice type of guy when it comes to analytics. And I was like, yeah, that's me. Cool. So I decided it's time to jump in and do that before, too much time has passed between the question and the answer. It's a lack of self-control from me personally. I can tell you that much because it immediately spun out of control because I did put something out. I was like, hey, working on this thing. If you're looking for a baseball, because the last couple episodes here have not been super baseball related. It's been a lot of off the field stuff. So now I said, yeah, doing some on the field stuff. It's going to be an exciting video coming out later today. Immediately, I ended up in the weeds on this thing, and there's a chart that becomes 3 charts. It lands at 7 charts. That takes a little while. And then things just got busy. And I had time, one of those things where I had time to prep, but no time to record it. Whole thing. You didn't ask for this. None of us asked for this, if we're being really honest about it. But yeah, that's where we're at. To the point. We're talking park factors. If you don't know what park factors are, for the layman, for the normal person, park factors are kind of a sliding scale of whether a ballpark that a team plays in is pitcher or hitter friendly. Generally, this is calculated using amount of runs scored plus a couple other factors combined and then sort of weighted over the course of several seasons. So that's what we got into. And there's some peculiarities. We're going to get through it. We're going to go into the weeds. We're going through the charts. If you're listening on the audio platform, respect it. I'm going to do my best to describe what we're looking at to you. You can figure it out. If you're listening to this for fun, you're also the type of person who kind of is going to be able to wrap your head around this thing. So don't worry about it too much. That said, I will probably be posting these all in, I'll do Facebook. No, Facebook, good Lord. No, they're going on Instagram. They're going on Instagram, and then we'll go from there. Yeah, all right. Indy Ball Nation, by the way, on Instagram. Follow. Why not? It's not a good time. The Twitter is really the garbage fire. Let's talk about this, huh? So, what are we looking at here? We're looking at, first things first. Let's talk. I can pull a spreadsheet here. Let's do a spreadsheet. How weird would that be? Sure. All right, there we go. Let's show and tell begin. Let's talk. First things you might notice. Got some Frontier League teams at the top. They are some of the smaller dimension parks in a solid offensive league without any of the other sort of circumstances in place that help balance some of the other ballparks that we're going to talk about here. The thing to note is park factor is imperfect for the situation that Indy Ball is, because I'm trying to combine all these into one conversation, and we will split it into leagues because it's a little bit easier. But if there are parks where if you're in the Pioneer League where a lot of runs are scored and you just have a normal number of runs scored, you're going to look really pitcher friendly on the scale when every other ballpark is high elevation giving up a ton of runs. So we'll take a look at what that looks like here. But to the point, Florence, Gateway, Trois Rivières, top 3 teams here in park factor. A 130 is ungodly. Florence. I mean, if you are a 110, I think like a 108 maybe 110 is like the highest in Major League Baseball. That's like what Colorado is sitting at. I think a 90 to 92 is what Seattle has going on with their stupid batter's eye that they won't fix. So if it's over 100, you're hitter friendly. If you're below 100, you're pitcher friendly. That's what we're looking at here. Florence is just inviting chaos at this point. And frankly, I can't really figure it out why. Because you'll see here, I also have it sort of by dimensions. And how did I measure dimensions? Great question. Poorly. Not the way God intended. Right? What I did was I worked with what I had, which is not everyone lists their dimensions. So satellite imaging, measured it out to left field pole, right field pole, dead center, left, midway point between left and right. Midway between left and center field, midway between left and right field. Is it perfect? No. But it gives a concept at least. It shows an obvious red flag if there is one. Florence is an interesting situation. Gateway is a small ballpark. That is what it is. Trois-Rivières is a smaller ballpark, is what it is. Florence is right in the middle, frankly, and we're going to take a look at some charts here that shows it. My best theory, and I really couldn't get any response. I've hit up some people, and like everyone's like, just crazy out there. The only thing I can come up with is they have very little foul territory, and that takes some outs off the board maybe a couple times a game. Maybe. That's what I got cooking on that one. I don't know, man. If you're a Florence Y'alls fan or you're someone in the know, you let me know. I'll follow up with this because it's confusing. And 130 is so high. It is so high. That's out of hand. And yeah, even Gateway and Trois-Rivières kind of getting thrown under, like pushed under the rug a little bit just because Florence is so out there, but there you go. Other things to note, you got the Pioneer League parks right below them, the Pioneer League parks of Missoula, Idaho Falls, Ogden, and Grand Junction, all elevation ballparks. Not the only elevation parks, but we'll take a look at that as well. But yeah, Missoula is a 121, so 21 points above 100, obviously, in favor of hitters. At the bottom there, you got Grand Junction as a 114, more like a 115. So that pocket, 115 to 121, is Pioneer League parks with some elevation to them. And then you got Sioux Falls as the highest American Association park at a 113, we'll call it. And then Lexington, which is no surprise, is the most hitter-friendly park in the Atlantic League at a 112, followed by York, Lancaster, and Gastonia, all smaller ballparks there. We'll pause on that for now. I will take a scroll down. I'll point out, too, you usually see red boxes on this chart I made, this spreadsheet I made, indicate more hitter-friendly. So smaller dimensions, higher elevations. In the 3-column chart, which to my podcast listeners is just the team, the park factor, the dimensions, the elevation. If you will see very likely at least one red box next to teams with a red park factor. Of course, Florence barely has a red dimensions box and not outstanding in any way elevation number. So of course, that bites me on the number one. But down toward the bottom, you'll see more of the same here as I have sort of an extra row in, but I'll delete that now. The most pitcher-friendly parks are also Pioneer League parks, but we're going to talk about it. You got Glacier at an 82.7, an 82.1 for Billings, and a 78.5 for Oakland. These 3 parks are at normal, well, Oakland's at normal elevation, call it that. And that skews them completely against their competition in the Pioneer League. Glacier and Billings are just large ballparks, and they've kind of built it to the part where it's like, well, elevation's less of a factor now. So you get a little more even play there, which is good for everybody involved, in my opinion. But we'll look at that again, as I said. Let's start. I'm trying to see if there's anything else I should point out here. Now, let's go to the charts. How about it? First one I got here, we got park factors, and we got the average dimensions. That will pretty much give you a good idea of what's happening here. We talked about how I measured dimensions. It's not perfect, but for those of you who aren't seeing it, park factors, or those of you who are, I'll explain. Park factors are running left to right, so more pitcher-friendly is on the left, more hitter-friendly is on the right. Average dimensions, the bigger ballparks are up top, the smaller ones are at the bottom. Make sense? Gotcha. Generally, this is an unsurprising chart. Things are running top left to bottom right. So top left being more pitcher friendly and larger ballpark. So that all tracks, right? If it's on average, your walls are deeper, it's going to be better for pitchers. And then as you come down, you get down toward the more hitter friendly and smaller ballparks. So you got your Gateways over there. You got Trois-Rivières. The Jackals are a situation which we'll discuss. Florence going way out there in a way we can't really understand fully at this point. And then at the top, you got the Billings and Glacier thing on the top left that I mentioned earlier. So this is all stuff that we've kind of gone over. And then Oakland here, you can see smaller ballpark. However, it doesn't really matter as much because compared to the competition in their league, it's not 6,000 feet in the air. So not a lot of home runs and whatnot compared to their competition. Okay. So let's talk about this further. We're going to break down a little more. First, I will take us over to... Well, you know what? Actually, maybe there's a couple things to note here. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here. New Jersey, we do know. I'll talk about them now. That feels good. Very short dimensions. Funky ballpark. They put it into like, if you don't know, they put it into like a high school football field. Jersey, what are we doing? So you got a really short wall into right field, essentially. That thing kind of goes straight line out to center, and then it does loop long out toward left center. So that kind of makes it up for it a little bit. Because of that, it does not go as hitter friendly as it should. It's barely more hitter friendly than average, I would say, which is fascinating because we thought it was going to be a garbage fire one. So it's a garbage fire, but it's for different reasons, not for the hitter friendly reasons that we suspected. But that's why New Jersey is so far down the chart at the bottom of the dimension size, but toward the middle of park factor. Idaho Falls and Rocky Mountain, I did want to point out because they are largest ballpark is Rocky Mountain, and they're also toward the middle, just a little more hitter friendly than New Jersey. That is because I do think it's funny that the largest dimensions have a more hitter friendly ballpark than the smallest dimensions. Weird quirk, I'll point out, but that's because the Rocky Mountain's like 6,000 plus feet elevation, so that ball's flying. For what it's worth, that's like 1,500 feet higher elevation than Coors Field. Idaho Falls also is kind of in a similar boat where they are, it is elevation affected. It is pretty hitter friendly, let's be honest. I was going to say it could be worse, but it is a larger ballpark. So imagine if they brought that down to average, it would be a travesty. So that's the situation we got going on here. And I'll keep it rolling, but we will talk elevation now. So we're not going too far ahead. Let's go the elevation. Okay. For those of you who can't see it, there's 10. This chart goes from 0 to roughly 7,000 feet in elevation. It's the same thing. Park factor is going left to right. Elevation is going bottom to top. So highest elevation's at the top. So it's kind of fairly simple to understand. Intuitive, if you will. There are 10 teams above 1,500. Keep in mind, this goes up to 7,000. 10 teams are above just 1,500 feet. All of them are Pioneer League teams. The only ballpark on here that is in the Pioneer League from last year that isn't above that is Oakland, which is pretty much sea level down here. And you can now start to really understand why they're in such a funky spot when it comes to park factor. Rocky Mountain, as I said, those large dimensions really keep this thing from going too far as a hitter's park, but they nailed the math on that one. Congratulations on that one. Somebody took the right steps to make that happen. So I'll let it go from here because there are some other things to note. Well, there's not really. You know what? No, the things I want to show you, they're better shown on some other charts, actually. So just oogle for a moment at the Pioneer League and their elevations, and then we'll carry on. And if you ever wonder about why the run environment is the way it is, it's in large part due to that. All right, now there's a lot going on here. This chart shows, and we're not going to stay here long because I have a better breakdown of it coming, but just to get familiar with it, this chart shows elevation, again, top to bottom, like it was in the last chart. And then average dimensions is now left to right. So the bigger ballparks are on the right, smaller on the left. The lower ballparks, elevation-wise, are to the bottom, higher ones to the top. We're together. The added little thing here is there's a little circle behind each logo, which you can see here. Or maybe you can if you're listening to me, in which case just let me describe it. It's a vibe. The darker red that the circle is more hitter-friendly. The darker blue is more pitcher-friendly. Okay, so we see some trends here, and we'll get into them more because we're going to go league by league here. But generally, the trend is that the bottom is more blue because the higher elevation ones are, more hitter-friendly, so they're more red. Generally the trend, just about everything left to the left is going to be hitter-friendly because it's smaller ballparks, and that's just going to be that way, except for Oakland, which again, because they're compared to all the high elevation ballparks, you follow. And then let's see if there's any weird things standing out. Again, you can really see Rocky Mountain is crazy up there. You see how big the ballpark is. You see how big the elevation is. But they did it right, so kudos to them. You have the Billings, Glacier, and Idaho Falls camps for holding it down on the hitter-friendly side. Again, NOCO, slightly bigger ballpark, slightly higher elevation, but have managed to maintain somewhat normal. It's slightly pitcher-friendly technically compared to the league, so that's fun. Pioneer League is just fascinating. Anyway, let's move on because let's talk just specifically the Atlantic League teams. If you draw your attention to the bottom, since we're back into the normal elevations here, there is really nothing surprising here. 4 parks with below average ballpark size are all in red, meaning they're pitcher-friendly. The lone exception would be on the right side with larger dimensions, but is still hitter-friendly. That's Long Island. And I'm not 100% sure why it's still hitter-friendly with the larger dimensions. I do think, again, like Florence, it might have something to do. They have sort of small foul territory down the lines. It's sort of one of those ballparks that like puckers in as you get like toward between the first and third base bags going out to the outfield, it kind of comes in almost to match the warning track in foul territory. So it gets really tight toward the end. That's my thought on it. Unsurprising, the other ballparks being more pitcher friendly considering the dimensions. We're talking specifically Charleston, Southern Maryland, Staten Island, High Point. So not too much to talk about there. I have been to Lexington. I've seen, if you guys remember the 2021 Lexington team where they really stacked that lineup and took advantage of that ballpark. Yeah, there you go. Now you're thinking on it. The average dimensions compared to elevations, we're looking same chart, different teams because we're looking at the American Association now. Hard to ignore the size of the ballparks here, by the way. It's fascinating. I've never really caught the fact that 10 of the 12 parks in the American Association are like above average when it comes to dimensions. Most of them well above average, which is interesting. Most of those, of course, are pitcher friendly. The two largest parks, however, are not pitcher friendly, which is a fun little quirk. We're talking Sioux City and Cleburne that are, somehow still favoring hitters despite the large dimensions. Again, though, both have little to no foul territory in the outfield, so that remains my theory. Maybe the hot weather in Texas is helpful. I don't know, but it's something to consider. Oh, and meanwhile, while the biggest ballparks, dimensions-wise, somehow favor the batter, pitchers are favored at the smallest ballpark, Chicago, ever so slightly. So that's weird. It just barely, technically it's a hitter's park. Technically it is, but just barely. Like it looks like the background is white, not blue or red, rather. So yes, it's a small ballpark, but there's sort of a cut-in in right field that sort of skews the dimensions conversation too. So it looks a little smaller than it plays. Got tall walls, like 13-foot walls. That definitely balances things. As always, you'll note that the birdcage is a launching pad. Got like 113-ish park factor, so that's fun. Let's go Frontier League now, because Frontier League's got a lot of stuff cooking, yeah? Frontier League, again, all fairly low elevations. Let's see. Most of the league is made up of above average ballparks when it comes to the size. The exceptions being Gateway and Trois-Rivières and Jersey, who are much smaller, and they're both very hitter-friendly. New Jersey's less so, but still hitter-friendly. Not much to point out here. Again, the one is the Florence, which is weird, still average to above average dimensions, but they do happen to be super, like the most hitter-friendly park. I will also point out a couple quick things here. You might notice if you're viewing, all the way bottom right, underneath where the chart is, there's a little bit of blue sticking out, and that belongs to our new friends in Mississippi. That's just estimated based on past years, but they are historically a pitcher-friendly ballpark with large dimensions. They're bringing that to the party. It projects as an 88 as their park factor. I think they'll be the lowest in the league, if I recall. That's also going to be down east, hiding, I believe, down toward the bottom near New England, right down here for those of you viewing. They have slightly above average dimensions. Historically, another ballpark that's pitcher-friendly. It projects as a 93 park factor, so something to keep in mind. That could be skewed, but we'll see how it goes here. The Pioneer League. This is where we're using up the top 70% of this chart. Look at all that elevation. And then our friends down here, Oakland in particular, but they're not alone. You'll notice that's Yuba Sutter down there in the same area as them. Marysville projects as about an 88 park factor as well, same as Mississippi does. So that's down there. So keeping them company at sea level over in Oakland. We've discussed a lot of this, the elevation and the relationship to Oakland. The parks do kind of, the funny thing is, the parks kind of revert toward a normal situation, especially the ones that are not, the two California teams, because all of these have high elevations. So it kind of just, all the teams, so we're talking everyone in the Pioneer League does in California. They're all high elevation to some degree. So it really kind of normalizes to the bigger dimensions, the more pitcher friendly, the smaller dimensions, more hitter friendly. Which I think is interesting. I mean, Idaho Falls is a weird exception toward being hitter-friendly, batter-friendly, or a pitcher-friendly team here with NOCO. They're both sort of the same dimension, but they're flip-flopped, same dimension, same elevation, but they're kind of flip-flopped as to who's pitcher-friendly and who isn't, which is interesting, considering that Idaho Falls is the larger ballpark by numbers, but happens to be more hitter-friendly. So those are the details. What are your thoughts? That was in the weeds. That was for like 5 of you. That's okay. I got a couple other things coming up. I won't promise when, but we got a deep dive coming up on Northern Colorado and Grand Junction. Got some stuff going on on Instagram soon. Maybe having some fun with some reels, some game footage. We'll see. Doing some different stuff. What are your thoughts on this? I tried to do the math. I tried to make the charts. I hope you enjoyed it. This was to get, hey, we were not very on-field focused last couple of weeks. Now we are. Do you regret those? Tell me in the comments. Any follow-up questions? Any other topic ideas? I'm open to suggestions. I'm trying to do a lot of these videos this year, so suggest them because they're going to get weird. We're going to be like in the weeds on an out-of-the-park baseball thing if we're not careful, so watch out here. Which backyard baseball team is your favorite Indy Ball team? You don't want that. Maybe you do. Let me know. That's what the suggestions are for. Anyway, you have a good one.